Let's bring in Kevin Woodley of InGoal Media, the goaltending guru of the National Hockey League, who joins us after this Artys Silovs trade. How are you? Good to see you.
I'm good. I'm good. It's good to catch up with you guys. It's been kind of a strangely busy, maybe surprisingly so, summer on the goaltending front locally.
Yeah,
So yeah, some more
especially
news.
the Canucks, man. The Canucks are keeping the goalie guys busy here. So, first off, look, as we explained in our first segment, this was a textured trade, right? Like, I know there are a lot of Canucks fans out there sweating losing Arty because of what he's done for the organization at two levels for, a prospect who may never be in a mid-round pick, but there's all sorts of context wrapped around this trade. Kev, how did you see it?
Well, yeah, like I thought they did okay, and I'll be honest, guys, I couldn't spot you Chase Stillman if you spotted me a picture in a police lineup, right? So like I don't know, and I won't pretend to know much about the prospect yet. Obviously, dig in, read some interviews, and see things like that, and see if there's anything, if there's a there. But at the end of the day, even a fourth round pick is a little better than I thought they would do, just based on what Daniel Tarasov went for to Florida from the Columbus Blue Jackets. And I think, interestingly enough, when I was asked about potential destinations for Arturs after the Calder Cup final, I had an eye on Florida just because I know that the goalie department there, with Roberto Luongo at the top of it, Leo Luongo a big part of it in the development and scouting, sort of evaluate goaltenders in a similar fashion to what Ian Clark does here. And so it was interesting to me that I thought, hey, I wonder if they might look at Arturs and see a guy that they see upside remaining in. And interestingly enough, they went for another Ian Clark drafted goalie, Daniel Tarasov in Columbus, who is, again, in this market, people will be like, well, like Arturs is worth way more than Daniel Tarasov. And again, in the goalie world, Daniel's pretty highly regarded. This is a guy who at the age of 20, people were comparing to Pecorine with better technique. So it hasn't panned out for him yet. This is the reality. Eventually, you run out of time, and a highly regarded prospect requires waivers. For Columbus, Daniel Tarasov, that was last year. And they kept him in the NHL and really kind of stalled his development because they were worried about losing him on waivers. So they kept him in the NHL, barely played him. He needed to play. If there's a criticism to be had over the Arturs Silovs thing, it would be the fact that he got to age 24, had 5 seasons in North America of professional hockey, and this was a criticism that would go across 2 regimes here in Vancouver, and still is at like 110 American Hockey League games total. And so there were times where his development was stalled by a lack of playing time, and so maybe you would have been further along knowing what you had here. But at the end of the day, this is a goalie who had a great playoff run, deserves tons of kudos, has shown that he can rise to the occasion in big pressure moments, the playoffs, the World Championships. And I've got another key on those that I think we need to be cognizant of. But he's shown he can do that. And yet in the National Hockey League, it's an 861 last year in tough circumstances. Because don't forget, most of his starts were when this team lost its defensive identity. And so for a team that wants to win this year, for a team that keeps telling us there were only 6 points out of the playoffs, like the difference between playoffs and not playoffs last year, you could make a fair argument is what they got out of the backup position when Arturs was the backup, right? Like 2 wins in, I believe, 9 or 10 starts. Go 500 there, and we're talking about being right on that playoff bubble. So there was no way in my mind, given how last year went, even with the playoff run, that they were running him back in the National Hockey League, given their stated goals of making the playoffs again. And so that meant waivers or a trade, or you risk losing him for nothing.
In the NHL, centers and right D are the bells of the ball these days. People will move heaven and earth to acquire those things. Why has goaltending taken the hit that it has in terms of the trade market? We forecasted this long before this trade happened. Folks, reduce your expectations on what you're going to get for Arturs Silovs because this is a nice goaltending prospect here that the Penguins are getting, and yet it's really middling return and middling return in the grand scheme of things, not for a goalie. For a goalie, it's actually decent return as you talked about, but it's just not what you'd expect for a guy that Kevin, he could get plugged into the 5th game of the season here and steal them a win. Like guys that can single-handedly be in charge of victories this coming season still only get this.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's the unpredictability of it, right? Like the uncertainty and the difficulty in predicting it, right? Like, so I do think you can mitigate that somewhat when you have adjusted numbers and when you understand the context of what these goaltenders have done relative to shot quality. And I would say that, like, with all due respect, because again, he was incredible in the playoffs. And anytime he's been in a starter's role and gotten on an extended run and gotten to sort of just go play and stop thinking, he's had success. And I think that's what I was mentioning before. Like, that's not a coincidence. I had a couple of goalie coaches, evaluators around the league. When I started asking what the value was here and what they could expect in return and how he was perceived around the league, that was one of the things that I got back. Like, hey, World Championships, he's the guy. 2 years. Playoffs last year, after he went in, he was the guy. He just got to roll with it. Playoffs in the American Hockey League this year, he was the guy. And so you give him that opportunity to roll with it, and he's capable of this, absolutely. But does he project to be that guy in the National Hockey League? And if not, if he's your backup, can he give you that quality when it's once every 10 days instead of, 10 in a row? And there are some questions there. And so it's a really tough league to get a foothold in when you're coming off an 861 save percentage in spot duty. Like, that's a really tough thing for teams to commit to, and there are only a handful willing to do so. The Penguins may be one of the few sort of, pure rebuild, no intention of going for it this year squads, and they know where the flaws are. They think they can fix and mitigate some of them. I've had this conversation already with people in Pittsburgh's goaltending department. But overall, where the value, I think where it drops, Blake, is, and I'd be curious to see I guess John Gibson would be the equivalent. Like, where's the value I think the value for proven, established, high upside NHL goaltenders, we might start to see that go up.
Yep.
Because this was the first time in years that we did not have the annual game of musical chairs on July 1st. And so there's two lessons from that. Maybe the prospect value is still a little thin, but proven guys, are we going to see a spike there because you can't go get a fix for a number one on the market? And in that case, you better be building what the Canucks have done here, a pipeline that allows you to say, man, we'd really like to have Artys Silovs in our fold, but we think we're going to lose him on waivers, so let's get something for him now because we're confident that we have 2 or 3 more guys coming up behind him, and you're constantly feeling good about what's coming up through you have to be that team. I think that's going to be the most important thing moving forward, is that you want to be in that position.
Waivers is the easy answer, Kev, but I know the Canucks weren't thrilled with Arturs last couple of summers. Did they believe that he had the goods to be able to realize all that potential? Is this trade being made if they think that he can realize the potential at hand?
Well, I don't know I don't know what their criticism was. I hadn't heard it over the past couple of summers. He came in, as the goaltenders often do here. I believe he was one of their top fitness testing guys coming off of last summer.
Good.
So, I haven't heard those criticisms. Listen, one of the things that was really tough for him is he made the organization, rough estimate, but fair estimate, $40 million last year. Because he got him through the first round, and in the second round, you keep your gate, and he got him 4 home games. $40 million, right? Yeah. He delivered.
Pretty good.
And he may not, but the challenge is, nothing exposes your game like a Stanley Cup playoff stint. Everybody picks apart every detail. And there are things that in his game remain a challenge that the Penguins are aware of. Mid to long distance tracking habits, traffic especially, and how those tracking habits open net versus closing net. And they got exposed a little bit in that Edmonton series. And once they were, I know the Calgary Flames came in for the season opener the next year, this past season, which Arturs started, which in retrospect might have been a mistake, but it was his net to lose. Arturs started that game, and they absolutely, number one with a bullet on their pre-scout, was point shots in traffic, and I believe they scored 2 of the 6, or maybe even more than that, off of those types of chances. So it is a skill that is really difficult to learn at the lower levels because nothing is like NHL traffic, nothing. And I've talked to guys around the league. It is the hardest thing to adjust to right now in the NHL is the purposefulness and the intensity of finding pucks through traffic and the way teams interplay point shots and guys at the net. Not just to hey, let's go to the net, but specifically take away lanes depending on how a goalie tends to handle things, depending on the other team's defensive system and where their shot blockers go. It is so dialed, and it is so hard. And that just happened to be the area that got sort of called out and spotlighted during the Stanley Cup playoffs. There will be goalies on non-playoff teams that go 3-4 years into their career before something like that gets identified in the way it did on Artys this year. And so that was tough for him coming into the season because other teams really went after it.
On the plus side, he's going to get his opportunities on a team like Pittsburgh. On the downside, is that blue line going to protect him at all? Like, is he just going to get shelled from not only long distance, but everywhere? And I'm a little bit worried for him on that. Like the Canucks may look like they're the winners in this trade regardless because he's just getting shelled in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, it's quite possible. And as a matter of fact, and this will be, I'll give you a little reality check for Canucks fans that, saw him. And I understand why, right? Like, he had so many big moments and he was very likable and he's so athletic. Like, there's a ton to like there as a goaltender. I understand why Canucks fans are maybe disappointed by the return or disappointed to have lost him. But this all ties in perfectly because I was just in the middle of a top 5 or 10 goalies under the age of 25 in the NHL list for NHL.com that'll publish as part of their, Young Guns series. I believe it publishes Wednesday. And so rather than just do it off the top of my head, I used my connections and I reached out to like 10 of the top evaluators, NHL goalie coaches, directors, and scouts around the league and tried to get a consensus list, right? Well, I use my brains when I have access to people much smarter than me. And so first off, Artys did not appear on any of those lists. Okay, nowhere in the top 10, and he counts because he's 24 years old. Like, this is just a little eye-opener for everyone. But one of the names that did was Joel Blomqvist, the 22-year-old that played in Pittsburgh last year. And you'll look at his numbers last year, and you'll see an .885 save percentage, and you'll be like, oh, that's a tough way to debut. His adjusted numbers were actually one of the only Penguins goalies that was well above adjusted. That's how bad the environment was. That his .885 was the best performance relative to shot quality of anyone. And so, yes, I had a couple of the evaluators drop him down their top 10 list near the bottom with the note, we're not sure he survives the next couple of years behind that Penguins team and that it could be brutal on him. So enter Artys, and it's actually smart if you're the Penguins, because not only do they have Blomqvist, who is a goalie I believe the Canucks had high on their draft list the year he was picked, but they've got this young Russian kid whose name escapes me right now, but he started in the ECHL last year. They actually hired a goalie coach specifically so they would have someone in the ECHL with him. He came up to the American Hockey League 2/3 of the way through the season and, ho-hum, rattled off 19 straight wins. So this allows them to protect those two young goaltenders who don't require waivers. And that's why I always say, use it as long as you can with these guys. Don't burn it. They'll get to stay in the American Hockey League while Artys takes a lot of bullets in the National Hockey League. Now, the one thing about playing a Penguins team as bad as they are, teams aren't necessarily going to pay attention to the pre-scout the way they do when they're going in to face a cup. Like, the expectations in Vancouver were raised, and teams came in trying to dial in on things. We've seen goalies in San Jose post good numbers because teams don't try and get to the dirty areas. They not as care. No, they just kind of it'll become, other than Sid and Gino and Letang, it'll become Tuesday night in Pittsburgh where the goalie coach will have that pre-scout, but it just doesn't get the same attention that that the Flames gave it coming into game one. We'll just beat them. Yeah, and exactly. Sometimes that means a lot more shots. I know I say from the outside, but sometimes it's one of the few times where, like San Jose last year, actually their goalies faced a ton of low-danger chances because teams just didn't grind and dial in on it.
Right.
Sergei Murashov, I think, is the goalie you're thinking of in Pittsburgh. Moving on. So answer me our Whistler Golf Club poll question then, Kevin. If you had to bet right now, is Artys Canucks folklore, or is he an NHL starter one day?
Oh, man.
Is he Troy Gamble? Is he Troy Gamble, or is he an NHL starter?
Well, he's already higher on the folklore list because of what he's done, right? The World Championships, the playoff run, as much as it ended in Game 7, we are JT Miller hitting Nikita Zadorov in the shin away from maybe them making the Western Conference Final in the final minutes. Because I tell you right now, Stuart Skinner wasn't even looking at that shot. Mm-hmm. Honestly, I can't. If I could answer that question, I'd be making a lot more money working for a team.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. And actually, to be clear, everybody's here is rooting for him. I thought the kid was a breath of fresh air.
And he has the tools. That's the thing. There are things Artys does that not a lot of goalies can do. Can the Penguins, can they, and I know they've already got a plan in terms of getting him on pucks and staying on pucks from a distance. Can they unravel that and help him with that and buy him enough time to sort of find his legs? That was the one thing that was never going to happen here because it's win now. But the traffic stuff just takes time. And I think he's going to get it in Pittsburgh. So I would not put mortgage payments on it, but I wouldn't be surprised if this kid, shows us up. And I don't know NHL starter guys, but can he become an NHL regular? And if you think about where he started from a draft perspective and all that, like it may not end up being found money in Vancouver, but the expectations got raised based on some of the things he did in these tournaments and in the playoffs, perhaps unfairly to what the roots of what he was drafted as.
That's right, and he's already outperformed that. On Demko, Kev, Blake and I have done our utmost to explain sort of the risk that both sides are undertaking here. Did you understand that contract extension that he got?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I did, because if you believe that you can get him playing even 45 games on a consistent basis, healthy, at $8.5 million. I was a little surprised by the number, but then again, one of the reasons, I should say I was surprised by the whole thing. I don't want to try and rewind history. I didn't think it was going to happen. Both sides said they wanted it to happen, which is all fair and good, but I didn't think it would happen, right? And I was on the record as saying that because I thought the ask would be higher than the risk they'd be willing to take. So I'm surprised by the number in that I didn't know they'd go that high. And I didn't think Demko, frankly, would do it for much less. So this puts him at the same level pay-wise as a lot of his peers of what he's capable of doing, what he did 2 years ago, right? Vezina caliber goaltending. And frankly, what he did the year before that, which nobody could see because under Bruce Boudreau, his adjusted numbers in the Vezina finalist year and the year before were very similar. It's just we couldn't see it because they were giving up all these chances under Boudreau. So I understand it. I think more of the risk goes on the Canucks just because, and again, one of the insurance policies just walked out the door. So if either guy is hurt, if Demko misses 6 weeks, we've seen what happens if you overplay Lankinen, and you still need a guy. Maybe it's Arty Party, who I think people have kind of forgotten is, I believe, still under contract for another year in the American Hockey League. Yep. You still do need another guy. So the risk is on the injury for the Canucks. You're paying him at a Connor Hellebuck-like level. If you get 45 games of elite Demko, I'm on the record in the past as saying Demko at his best has the potential to be the U.S. Olympic starter ahead of Connor Hellebuck. I believe in the talent that much. It's just that even before the most recent injury and all the headlines it generated, all the seasons prior, it was hard he didn't make it through. He didn't make it to the finish line healthy. And so that is, frankly, a fair question mark at this point about whether that can happen. If you get it, you have elite goaltending locked up for 3 years at the price of elite goaltending. But the risk is you don't get it. And I think 45 games is fine. But the risk is you don't get it for 6 weeks at a time more than once, even once a year. Yeah. And now you need Patera or Tolopilo.
Are those your AHL goalies? Are they, because they've got 7 goalies under contract. 6 of them are in North America Pro Hockey already. So
they've run 3. Yeah, they've run 3 in the American League for a couple of years, Blake. And I do think when they signed Patera, one of the things they liked about him is they felt confident enough in his game. Now, I don't know what happens after. I mean, he missed so much time last year, and I should probably text him and ask him how he's feeling. But I know he was skating at the end of the season. I know he's really well liked. He fits. He wasn't a guy that was going to ruffle feathers or need to play a lot to keep his game. So it allowed you to keep playing some of your prospects while still having an NHL. They believed an NHL capable insurance policy. And so I would imagine that still applies, again, not having
Ty Young will stay up with the other 2 guys.
Yeah, I would think so. And listen, Ty, what a great story Ty is. I mean, and also, if I could, a bit of an indictment. Everybody wants to know what's wrong with Canadian goaltending. And I've kind of maintained for years the CHL is part of what's wrong with Canadian goaltending. This is a kid whose team couldn't, nobody wanted him. Nobody wanted Ty Young in the CHL because they didn't see him as somebody that they would spend a 20-year-old spot on because you're limited in how many you could have. And now you can make the argument from a development standpoint, okay, well, that opens up the spot for another goaltender, younger goaltender. But in the CHL, if Ty Young, who had a 926 in the ECHL, and goalies for generations have told me the hardest jump is first year pro to AHL or ECHL. It's not up to the NHL. It's that first year pro is the hardest jump. And he posts a 926 and goes 8-3 in the AHL as a 20-year-old, but he wasn't good enough to play in the CHL this year. In the CHL,
Honestly,
your development window is a year and a half, 2 years. Maybe you get some starts. Maybe you're a starter at 18, like Medvedev will be. And then you get your 19-year-old season. But like it's way too small. And the NCAA is going to artificially extend it now, so it'll be okay.
And the crazy part is like he lost his job in Prince George to Ravensburgen, who went in the first round this year. Like there was probable cause as to why he got forced out of that crease. Like,
yeah, and like listen, I know Prince George tried. They just they couldn't get a taker. Like and in a way,
that's amazing.
Was the best thing to happen because otherwise he can't go to the
exactly.
ECHL.
No, it's good. It's good. Lastly, just what are you hearing on Medvedev, their second round pick?
Oh, they're excited. And so when you look at this depth chart they've built, don't sleep on Asku Koskenvuo as well. Aku is, I know his numbers didn't translate necessarily at Harvard, but there are elements of it. This is often what happens, much like Ty Young. Like they don't draft them based on the success at the level they play. They draft them based on attributes they think will translate at the pro level, and Aku has them in spades. So is he on the same path as Young, start in the ECHL, have a lot of success? How quickly does he move up the ladder? There's a game reading and gameplay element in his game that still needs to be answered, but all the tools are there. And then Medvedev, like at the end of the day, Tolopilo, Young, like Medvedev may end up being like the sort of prime prospect. He may pass them, but you have to have patience because there's a lot of time left. And he's skinny as a rail, but you can see the arms, the length. Let's put it this way. I pulled Marco Terranius aside at development camp and asked him what he thought of young Medvedev after the first couple of skates. And the comparisons he gave me without thinking about it, and this is his length and his ability to access edges from his knees and still stay mobile, was Andrei Vasilevsky. Now, I'm not saying he's Andrei Vasilevsky, but he's like the way he moves from his knees and the way he's able to access power and control his edges. He's like, that reminds me a little bit of Andrei Vasilevsky. And these Russian kids, man, like Medvedev talked about it, man. All they do as kids, they don't stick them in goal and teach them the reverse VH. The goalies just skate and skate and skate. No pucks, no shots. I know guys that are in the NHL that remember those sessions with tears in their eyes. Like, but they learn how to move rather than worrying about stopping pucks. And there's some lessons there in terms of how we do things here and how we emphasize winning and stopping pucks and technique at far too young an age. But this kid, yeah, he's promising.
Amazing. You always make us smarter on goaltending. Thank you for your time, Kevin. We'll see you on the golf course here later this summer. Appreciate this.
My pleasure, guys. Thanks for having me.